Thank you, Derek. The question of reapportionment is certainly a germane one to New York as it is to Louisiana, because it is expected that when the Census Bureau reports to the President at the end of December or at latest the first week of January, that New York will lose a member of Congress, as will Louisiana. And so this is a subject I got into about 2 years ago, because a political consultant called me and started asking me questions about the census that I couldn't answer, and I went to the text and I started looking at it, and he said, well, who do they count, and who should be counted? I couldn't answer those questions. So I started looking into this, and there's some interesting historical things, but significant political consequences to how you count. And that was the basis of the article that we did, and since then I've been working on litigation, and I do expect to file suit as soon as the numbers are handed down at the end of December or early January. Let me first of all say that constitutionally there is no necessary connection between census and reapportionment and immigration, but the fact is politically there is certainly a strong connection, not only today, but there has been a strong connection since the 1920s. It's well to start off with terminology and realize that terms such as illegal alien or illegal immigrant, which cause emotional distress, are not really relevant to this topic, nor is the term undocumented worker relevant to the topic. The relevant term is going to be inhabitant, which has subdivisions of 1, foreign visitor, whether legal or illegal, and 2, out-of-state worker or out-of-state student. Those are the relevant terms. As to illegal alien, etc., I have in fact been representing people who fall into the category of illegal alien. It is not that they entered illegally, it is that in fact they often came in, and as many people in this country who are classified as illegal by the INS or by ICE, they're so classified because they've overstayed their visas. And as far as undocumented workers go, we're talking not just about workers. Many of the people that I represent are in fact students. So if we can clear out the terminology question and then look at it, why is it that I'm talking about how the count goes? Well, first of all, let me make it clear that the count of the census is certainly related to the reapportionment. But from the beginning almost, the census has been used for additional purposes beyond its constitutional purpose. At the beginning, and this comes from the original text, and ultimately the problem is a textual one, and this is how in large part the issue is going to be resolved. The text has to do with the word numbers that's actually in the text, and I'm going to go explain that as we continue. The issue ultimately is whether the Census Bureau, which counts 22 million non-U.S. citizens, whether those numbers should be counted into the apportionment of House seats. The figure 22 million comes from the Census Bureau itself, and it does not break down the numbers. Of that 22 million, there are a number of people who are classed as, quote, immigrants. And under immigration law, the only people who are classed as immigrants are those who have a visa that allows them permanent status and they are on their way to citizenship. So for our purposes, everyone who doesn't fall in, quote, immigrant status, whether you have a visa or you don't have a visa, that is the issue. Should those persons be counted? I have a former student, for instance, who is here at Syracuse as an undergraduate. She's been here 4 years. She's from Shanghai, and she was undoubtedly counted in the census. Why? Because the Census Bureau made a point of counting every student, not just where they're living, but where they were going to school. And this has a huge impact in terms of states that are net importers of students. Massachusetts, for instance, is a net importer of students. So Massachusetts benefits by bringing out-of-state students in. Those numbers are included in the apportionment. Even if you don't want it. That is, even if your parents fill out and say that you are living at home, you're not counted at home, even if it's put on the census form, because the Census Bureau then calls to the house, as they did to me and others, and goes down and finds out where the student actually is going to school, and that's where the student is counted. So the issue is whether this count that the Census Bureau is doing, whether it should not be cut back to reflect what we contend are those persons who should be included as inhabitants in their own state. So this would mean eliminating all persons who are foreign visitors who are not immigrants, and it would mean reallocating students back to their home states. Now, the Census Bureau, and we agree on a number of things, and that is that historically the understanding goes back to the beginning. But there is a question about how you interpret the text. So what I'm going to go through is a discussion briefly of what the textual problem is, and then give you some history about how this problem came about, and then finally look at some of the consequences. Like many things in the Constitution, there has been a great distortion caused by the institution of slavery. And at the beginning, this was no insignificant problem. We all know that. So if you look at Article 1, for instance, it says under Section 2 in the third paragraph, representatives and direct taxes, and I'll come back to that, shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union according to their respective numbers. Controlling word is numbers. Which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed. Turns out that Indians not taxed is a significant issue. 3/4 of all other persons. Now, you may wonder why direct taxes is in there. And the problem, as explained in the Federalist, is that they understood from the beginning that states would have a tendency to want to inflate their population in order to gain more representation in the House. They understood that from the beginning because they know human nature. Madison explains that the attempt is to balance the benefit with a burden so as to discourage inflated numbers. So by tying direct taxes to it, the thought was that you're not going to want to increase your taxes unnecessarily. Direct taxes would have been head taxes, per person tax, or taxes on land. In fact,